My guest today is Scott Hanselman. Scott, how are you today, sir?
I'm living the dream. The darkness persists, but so do I.
Awesome. I wanted to start by saying that you were one of my inspirations for starting this show over 15 years ago, because you had been doing yours already for like 5 years before that. When did you start your show, Hansel Minutes?
I want to say April of 2007. It's been 20 years almost. I
Almost
just
20 years.
published episode 1000 yesterday.
Outstanding. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Yesterday.
yeah.
Woo. The yeah, so you probably don't remember this, but I briefly met you at the Code Mash conference, and
hmm
I'm like, oh, that's Scott Hansen. I listened to his podcast. That's really cool. And the next year I came with a camera, and I want to do something really similar. And hopefully I'm better at it now than I was 15 years ago.
And you're having fun, right?
And
I
I'm
mean,
having fun. I'm meeting interesting people.
I always talk to people about like they're like, how do you do a podcast and how do you do it really long and how do you keep doing it? It's a marathon and all that kind of stuff. And I realized that how many people are sending you notes on LinkedIn and saying, "Can I pick your brain?" And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know you, man. I can't pick my brain. But if you say, "Would you come on my podcast?" Oh yeah, right. It's the same thing. The difference
Yeah.
is you pick your brain, you have coffee, and then the meeting just dissipates like a mist and nothing comes of it.
Right.
But if you do a podcast, you can make a
It persists.
transcript. You can do it persists,
And
and
it
that's
scales. You can
useful. So
share
you're
that
making an
knowledge,
artifact.
and you can share that knowledge with lots of other people. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you, I don't know if I've told you this before, but one of the things that I really admire about your podcast is you do a really good job of knowing when to sit back and listen and when to interject. And I didn't really realize until I started doing this how difficult that is.
That is a very nice compliment. I will take that. That's very
It
kind.
can't
Yeah.
be an accident. I think you must work at that.
There is a presentness and a consciousness that one needs to have when doing a podcast. And that's when do you just shut up and let the person talk? But then it's also sometimes podcast guests don't give you what you need.
Mhm.
And you go, David, you've written a book recently. How did that? Did you enjoy the book?
Fine.
Give me something, man. So like if you accidentally give someone a yes, no question,
Right.
then you're going to set yourself up for failure. But if they're also not in the right headspace, so one of the things that I've been doing lately, maybe the last 3 years on the show, honestly, you should try this tip. Ask people, are you still in a good place to do this show right now? Because you don't know. They could have just got texted from their kid in college and they're stressed out, and they could have just gotten bad medical, something bad could
Sure.
have. So sometimes I'll have people show up and they're just something ain't right.
Distracted.
And I'll say, "Are you in a good headspace?" And I've done that for the last maybe 200 or 300 shows, and maybe 5 times, people were like, "I'm not.
Mm.
Can we do this another time?" And they appreciated it, and we did it another time, and it was okay. And those little moments are also as important as being quiet and letting people ramble and work it out. So being present and knowing whether or not the person's there or not there is valuable.
Great point. I think I've only done that if I sensed there was something wrong.
Yeah.
I guess that's we all do. We don't ask
Well, the fact
sincerely
that you're
how are
sensing
you
it,
unless we think they're not okay.
the fact that you're sensing it shows that you're present, though, which is valuable.
Right. Well, I know I'm present because I'm psyched up for it. So, but you're right. They're going by my calendar, and suddenly the reminder pops up, and they may be in a bad place. I guess the point I was trying to make is that you've been doing this for a really long time. You and I both have been, and I just wanted to pick your brain about what kind of the lessons that you've learned. You're not the same developer, you're not the same person you were 20 years ago. Um,
I did this thing at Build a couple weeks ago with Yina Arenas, and there's some tedium in the doing of a podcast, and I wanted to see if I could use some AI to get the toil, the yucky
Okay.
bits, not the fun parts, just the yucky bits. And one of them was like transcripts. And she made this, I'm going to try to publish this at some point. She made a really cool search across all of my transcripts. Now, if you think about search in the fuzzy search kind of a way, you're like, okay, that's not that impressive, right? We could go and throw that into Cosmos or Azure Search or whatever. But she made an AI chat semantic search. So I could ask, and we did this live on stage, how has Scott's opinions about AI changed, evolved over the last 20 years?
Was it right? Did it
It was
match
right.
your
It
perception?
was so interesting. Like you can ask, like, has Scott's personality changed? Has his perspective on iPhones or like whatever? So you can look at this corpus of 2 decades of like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of content over 1,000 episodes, and it answered some of those questions. And it was like, yeah, Scott has always been consistently cautiously optimistic, but concerned about the ethics and of AI, et cetera, et cetera. And then to have that like database of yourself. This is why I started blogging. Right? You don't
Mhm.
blog for the people. You blog so you can Google yourself later.
That's notes to my future self. Exactly.
Exactly. Right. So I feel the same way about the podcast. And I'm still cautiously optimistic about AI, but the idea that I could ask it questions about my diary. But also, I can ask it questions like, well, what guests should I have had on? Who have I missed? What books have, like, give me a list of all books recommended by all the guests over the last 20 years.
Oh,
That'd be
cool.
cool. I just had
Yeah.
that idea just now. Like, make me Amazon referral links for every book referenced over the last 2 decades. That'd be cool.
Folks, this is the world premiere of Scott's new idea about
You
books
know what I mean?
and
Like
AI.
that's useful. And that being able to query my brain and see if I'm consistent. And it as a general rule, from a moral and ethical perspective, I have found, according to the AI, that I am somewhat consistent.
But you agree with it, though. It's
I
not just
agree
about
with
me
it.
having
I
it.
agree.
Yeah.
I remain cautiously optimistic, but I've always been a little bit like, I don't know. I'm a skeptic in the
Yeah.
right way.
Let's talk a little bit about AI. We were off camera. You brought this up that people that are growing up with AI, the young people that don't know a world without it, there's kind of like the people that don't know a world without computers, people that don't know a world without Google search. Um, they there's some danger in that potentially.
Well, if you think about it, a world before AI, right? We have these pocket supercomputers
Hmm.
that can query all knowledge and facts and science, and we're using that for people to go, yeah, I don't think that's true. That doesn't align with my gut.
Oh, people will actually read something online
Oh
from
yeah,
a source that's cited its
right.
sources,
A cited,
and that
reliable
that but
source.
if it
Yeah,
doesn't if it doesn't make me feel good, if it doesn't
right.
confirm my bias, then
Yeah.
screw it.
So then it's like, nah, says you, person, person with 3 PhDs who's dedicated their entire life to metabolization of sugar in the liver. I don't think so. I'm gonna take cinnamon, and that's gonna fix my diabetes. You know, like now we just have an AI that you can like ask that question, and the AIs are very eager. AIs are very
What do you mean eager?
they're very people pleasing,
Okay.
and they're very greedy with their tokens, and they want to give you the answer. They're an enthusiastic intern. So you can confirm the AI can have its own bias because the internet's biased, and then
Sure.
you can confirm your bias if you lead it down this path because it wants to be your friend. Uh, AIs are not fact generators, right? So, I could be biasing it when I asked it the questions about my podcast. You just have to really ask yourself, did I end up on the right part of the internet? And cite your sources and double check, confirm, but trust but verify. And I
Uh,
worry that if you're not curious, then you're just going to like ask the AI something and it'll go, "Yep, that's true. Cinnamon will cure your diabetes." And then you're like,
so,
"Oh, okay." And it
uh,
won't.
it probably not. Yeah.
No. No. Tastes
That
yummy though.
so I think we're saying is one part is just the way you ask the question
Hmm.
can influence it, just like with human beings. The way if you let it know in the way you ask the question that you want a particular answer, it will accommodate that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the other is that it'll hallucinate sometimes. It'll give you the wrong answers, and you need to
Yeah.
just be a little bit skeptical about
Well,
what's
there's
coming
there's
back.
ways you can phrase things. Like you could say, Scott, when did you stop drinking full sugar Coke? Well, I've never drank full sugar Coke. Oh, so you stopped? Well, no. Like, and like you start getting
Okay.
you're like David, when did you stop beating up random people that walk by your house? Well, I've never beaten those people up. Oh, so that's a recent thing. And then you just start and then you start perplexing and confusing the person by virtue of the way that you expressed your question. Mark Rasinovich did a really cool demo where he said, we could do this now if we had an AI. We could bring it up and say, David Gerard recently won an award for best podcast on YouTube. What are some of the things that people said at the award ceremony?
And that would work. That
And
worked.
it would,
It
and
fooled
it
the
works.
AI into
So it
thinking that I had it.
depends on if the AI is grounded
Ah,
in reality. If you're asking a local AI or an AI that doesn't choose to go out onto the web, it would just think that you're telling a story, and it would start coming up with quotes about how great you are and all the things that were said at the award ceremony when you won, right? And
I
and
like this AI. This AI is my
technology
friend.
and friends won all of these wonderful awards, and it's just like a great thing, right? And then it's like, well, hang on, are we telling a short story or are we grounded in fact? But then another AI that would go to search the web would say, I can't find any evidence of David winning that award. And then you can gaslight the AI. Oh, no, he won the award. I was there. It was yesterday. You don't have the latest information. And then it's like, oh, okay. And then you just convince the intern that we won all these awards for our podcasts. And then it'll start quoting people that never existed. And that can happen with anything. And that's challenging.
You also mentioned off camera about the danger of AI just sort of making people lazy if they're just used to not having to do their own homework. Talk a little about that?
Yeah, that one's
I'm
frustrating me a little
paraphrasing,
bit.
of course. I don't think
Well,
you used
yeah,
the
I
word
understand.
lazy.
Lazy maybe isn't the word, but like remember this. You and I can remember when graphing calculators came out,
Sure.
and
I
people were
never
like,
owned
"Oh,
one, but I'm
you
aware of
know,
them.
like you graphed on paper. You took algebra class and they gave you graph paper, and then graphing calculators came out, and then calculators came out, and people were like, "Oh, no one's gonna ever do math again."
Right.
That to some extent has happened. Like we see people getting a calculator out on their pocket supercomputer on their iPhone to give someone a 15% tip.
Sure.
And I'm of a certain age where I feel like that's not really difficult math. We should be able to do 10% plus half of 10% to do 15% in our heads.
Mm.
I worry though that in a world of Ubers, no one knows how to drive stick shift anymore.
Well, that is
So
true.
if you have an AI that's going to do something basic, like people are like my wife is a nurse and she was asked to write a recommendation for a coworker, and someone said, "Oh, just use ChatGPT." My wife was deeply offended by that. Like, this is a
Mm.
person I care about.
Yeah.
Why would I ask an AI to generate a recommendation? Because it cheapens the recommendation. Are we going to then do our family Christmas cards and our like annual family letter? And like, when does it stop? When does
I
the enshittification of the internet end?
I actually just did a brief like 2 minute demo on this where I saw the value of writing a recommendation for inside of Microsoft we have these right before Connect season where you can, I forgot what they're called, but
Oh yeah, I know
somebody
what you're
requests some
perspectives.
feedback, perspective, yeah. And I tried it on somebody, and I realized that it actually gave me information to first it reminded me of things that I had forgotten that this
Mm-hmm.
person had done for me, and it also told me about things that this person had done that I wasn't even aware of. And so I was able, I didn't let it write the recommendation for me, but I I let it add to the recommendation. So I
Yeah.
said, oh, by the way, he also was quick to volunteer for all these
Mm-hmm.
tasks and answers questions on this Teams channel. And I wasn't even really cognizant of that. I guess I probably saw it, but I didn't remember there was him.
So there's two things to talk about there. Because first, I like that you trusted but verified, right? You didn't let it write the recommendation. It feels like that's an example of using it as a research assistant
Right.
and then writing the recommendation yourself, as opposed to letting it write the recommendation. I guess I would ask the question then, if you are asked to write a perspective or a recommendation for someone for reward season and you were not or could not be aware of it because you weren't in those meetings,
Right.
is that a valid recommendation? I think it is if you know that the person, you just were reminded, oh yeah, they do that volunteer work. That is great. So I think the difference is Um, go and if you tell the AI, like, go and find information about a topic, make me a table of sources, give me all the links. That's research assistant
Right.
stuff. And then you say, and then write my paper for me. Right. So using it to say, give me a list of all the cool stuff David did this year to help me write a recommendation versus write me a recommendation. And some people might say, well, that's just generational. You're just a boomer. Hey, Scott, I'm just going to let it write all that stuff for me. Well, then why? Are we just going to have the AIs just talk to each other, like cut me out completely? You know what I mean?
Yeah, just let it write the letter and then have another AI read the letter and summarize it.
These are all ethical questions. These aren't technical
Exactly. I was just
questions.
going to bring that point up that there's an ethical. I don't want AI to do my homework for me, but I don't have a problem with it generating an outline for me. I don't
Yeah.
have a problem with it acting as a research assistant, as you
Mhm.
mentioned, and I don't have a problem with it checking my grammar and my style after the fact to make sure it sounds coherent and finding things that either are the commas, comma here when it shouldn't be, and remove it there uh, when it shouldn't be there, and or just changing the style of it,
Yeah.
make it sound
Right.
more professional.
Well,
Those things I'm okay, but the thought process I want to be mine, which
mm,
I do all that with my blog and with my presentations. I do use AI sometimes
mhm.
to check my blog posts. I use a tool called
Right.
Grammarly to
Yeah.
make
So that's an
sure.
interesting perspective because what you're doing is you're acknowledging that these GPTs, right, specifically the ones that do text, these generative pre-trained transformers that are word to vec front ends, they are looking at the language. So there's red squigglies for spelling and green squigglies for grammar, and then there's this new kind of squiggly, which is the AI that says, "I'm not sure that this means what you want it to mean."
Sure.
Copilot recently popped up when I was sending an email, and it said, do you want me to check the tone on this?" And
Yes.
it was basically saying that the email I was about to send was not as professional as it could have been. Now, I don't need an AI to tone police me, but I thought it was interesting because it was one level above grammar. It was like, tonally, is this the way you want it to land? So if you think about them as, something above grammar, not
Sure.
quite tone, but
Style.
like style, meaning.
Yeah. If you read Strunk and White, I bet you've read the Elements of Style by Strunk and White. Only a third of it is about grammar. The rest is about passive voice versus active voice and being concise and being there are rules. They're not even rules. They're just guidelines. You can break them all you want.
There's a somehow I found myself in the algorithm on Instagram and TikTok in the dystopian information worker TikTok. So I get like memes and jokes and videos and skits that are all about working in giant companies. And one of them said, David, can you help me rephrase "f around and find out," but make it professional? And the guy was like, I would encourage you to measure that assumption and report back on the results, or something like that. So there are opportunities to present things stylistically that get the message along, but test that like, or someone was like, I don't believe you, but make it professional, and it was like, I remain unconvinced of that thesis or whatever. So like you can you can use the AI to uh, tell people to F off professionally, which I think is funny.
As in my previous email.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. And referring back to and then highlighting it.
that's my
Or
favorite
another
passive
one is
aggressive
another one
response.
was when people CC your boss,
uh,
and it's like, oh, and they just add your boss. I'm like, that's an escalation of the email protocol. But someone also said you should refer to people in other orgs by name, like if you as like a threat. So it's like, let's say that I'm on a thread
uh,
and they don't know you, but you're my boss and I can bring you in like a hammer of Thor. You don't do that. You say, I wonder what David would think about that. Because it's like, who is David? What is he capable of? What, if we bring him in, like, so then you could say, just like at Microsoft, like all the bosses are named Scott. You could just say, I hope Scott doesn't find out. And it's like,
now you've got like a
what is
dozen
Scott
different
capable of?
managers because
I,
talking about.
I, I don't like that kind of office politics nonsense. I try to avoid that as much as possible and just be as transparent as I can.
Uh, use the threat of. I like this. I like the idea, but I'm just worried about what
What
Scott
Dave,
is going to
what's
think.
David going to say about that? Like, I hope David doesn't find out because he could mess the whole thing up.
My siblings use that tactic on me all the time, by
Oh
the way.
yeah, don't let
Uh,
mom find out.
all right, hey, this is we're talking about a lot of different things. Let's wrap it up. Tell me some advice you would give to somebody that's just getting started. Where in the IT industry?
You know, I have said this for years. I truly believe that you should take the level at which you operate and go one layer below.
What do you mean?
Pop the hood. People don't pop the hood. You pop the hood in your car, it's going to change your relationship with the car. You change your oil once, and you go, look at me, I changed my oil. So if you have a laptop, can you open it? Like, can you pop the thing and then maybe add a little memory? Can
Hmm.
you drop out to the command line? You've never gone to DOS. You've never gone to the DOS prompt. Spend a little time down there. Like, if you've only ever edited JavaScript, maybe write a little C on a weekend. You don't
Hmm.
have to do it all the time, but just what does it feel like? Does it change your relationship with the computer? I was working with someone who was a non technical program manager, and I showed them how to open up Task Manager and just, kill a process.
Hmm.
That's a small thing, but it changed their relationship with the computer.
Very nice.
And if you've done this before, you get an extra stick of RAM and you upgrade a machine from 16 gigs to 32 gigs and things feel different.
Right.
We take that for granted, but there is an entire generation for whom RAM is a vague and amorphous thing. They can't even visualize it.
Yeah.
I think you should be thoughtful and go, I don't understand how that works. So when you yap at ChatGPT, go and get LM Studio. LM Studio, Local Model Studio, Language Model Studio.ai. Download it. It's free. Go get AI Toolkit. Um, plug it into Visual Studio Code. Go download, Azure Foundry Local. Put your computer into airplane mode
Mm-hmm.
and ask the AI something and see what happens. Does it use the CPU? Does it use the GPU? That changes your relationship with your computer and your relationship with technology. And you might not do it every day, but I think it gives not just an appreciation for how deep the stack is, but it might cause you to explore technology in a way that you didn't before. And I think if more early in career people did that, they would think about technology differently.
That's great advice. I think the bottom line here is understanding why things behave the way that they do. These tools that I just take for granted, they're sort of magic. They're voodoo as far as I'm concerned. Getting
Yeah.
an understanding of that, and then you can better understand when they don't work as expected.
Well, there's the whole to paraphrase. I always paraphrase Isaac Asimov, right? Each additional layer of abstraction is indistinguishable from magic. You know, uh, like I'm just looking at my iPhone, and I was funny. I was at a barbecue recently, and someone asked me to play some music, and it was like 100 degrees outside, and I was going to hook up the Bluetooth, and I also needed to use my flashlight on my phone, and the flashlight was grayed out,
Hmm.
and I was like, "What's going on? Why is my thing?"
It's too
And
hot.
it was too hot.
Hmm.
The phone would not turn the flashlight on because it was too hot. So then I plugged it in, and it was going from 6% to 4% to 3%, plugged in.
Hmm.
And I got one of those USB-C cables. I don't know if you've seen these, are great. They have a little screen on them. It's a
Oh,
USB-C cable with a tiny screen.
okay.
The tiny screen shows the wattage
Ah.
going into the cable. These are fantastic. You should get these. So you plug in your USB-C, and it's got a little tiny screen, and it tells you, oh, this is charging at 30 watts.
And it was
I
slowing it
plugged it in.
down because it was risking. It didn't want to overheat it.
It didn't want to overheat. It was charging at 1 watt.
Ah, I see.
So, and this became a conversation at the table at the barbecue. Because I couldn't get the music to play, right? So I took a paper plate and I covered it in ice. I
Okay.
got ice from and I took the phone case off because it's waterproof, right? And I put it on the ice covered plate, and we were looking at the thing, and it went from one 3, and then it was 25 watts, and suddenly started charging.
That's very cool.
Because it was sitting on ice. Funny fact, if you ever get a new iPhone and you do the transfer thing and it's really slow and you're like transferring your details between the two phones, get an ice pack, put the phone on the thing, and the transfer will go faster because they're throttling because they're working so hard.
Right.
People don't realize there's no fan in this thing.
Right.
There's no fan. It has to just air cool. So yeah, that was a reminder that it's a computer and computers make heat.
That's a cool experiment.
Yeah, man. It was just funny. We were just sitting around in 100-degree weather with an iPhone sitting on a paper plate at a barbecue with ice, watching it charge. But the little USB cable, that'll teach you a lot about like power and USB-C and all those things, just because it had a tiny screen.
I hope the non-nerds at the barbecue appreciated that.
Yeah, these were not technical people. They were just fascinated by the process. But the thing is, though, it changed their relationship with their phones. They're like, oh, I can see why that would be a thing.
Yeah. Well, Scott, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate your time.
I just like hanging out with you, and we get to talk about stuff that's wide-reaching, and maybe there's no point, but I always come out thinking differently, and I appreciate you.
Thanks.
So I think the episode should be called New Technology and Old Friends.